please take a moment to increase the brightness on your device for optimal viewing. Hey folks, welcome back to the Sketchy Friendly, where every day I draw you a picture and tell you a story along with it. So today I'm going to tell you about the greatest band in the galaxy. All right. Just before we get started, just to let you know, if you're having problems seeing what I'm doing, I always start in with these blue pencils for my preliminary sketches. That way I can start off my drawing and not have to really commit to particular lines, but just get everything kind of blocked in. If you have problems seeing it, you can always increase the brightness on your viewing device, whether be it a phone or laptop. Also, if the picture is too small on your camera, you can always turn your camera horizontal so that it'll fill up the screen and it will be larger. Without any further ado, let's get going. So, I always think back about like the 80s and how much I loved the music back then. And I think about how I got into the music that I got into. Now, we all remember the bands that we used to listen to, no matter what era you grew up in. But I grew up in the 80s, so that's what I know. I started out listening to what my parents listened to, so that was like Beatles and all the 60s stuff, some 70s stuff like the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac. But I also was into 80s music, especially like Blondie, Devo. My dad listened to that stuff, so I have him to thank for that stuff. And then, of course, MTV came along in the early 80s. So all those music videos. So if you grew up in the 80s, you knew that was the place to go to listen to whatever was the most popular type of music back in the day. Which bands were you into? I listened to of course there's a lot of like the big hard poof rock, Rat, Poison, Motley Crue, Lita Ford. I liked that. It wasn't like my favorite, but I definitely, I listened to it. Part of it was that I was a little scared of the people that listened to that music back then, because usually it was teenagers, and being a little kid, teenagers scared me. I didn't think they were cool. I thought they were scary, because I got bullied by teenagers when I was little, so it was a little apprehensive about what they were about. But other than that, kind of the story of how I got into the music that I got into that wasn't exactly your top 40 was because I used to listen to this radio station in San Francisco. It was called KITS. And they played top 40 music. And they had, the wacky morning show, just like most silly radio stations had at the time. But somewhere along the line, they changed formats, and I didn't get the memo on that. They changed their music genres to like more alternative and kind of gothy, post-punk type stuff. And I had no idea. I was just a kid, so I just never turned the station. I just kept listening to that channel. So I had some very eclectic taste when I was a little kid. And it was interesting because not very many people, like older people, knew what I was into. Like my cousins, they were into kind of that kind of music, but I didn't. Most of my friends weren't into the type of music that I was into when I was in grade school. As I got older, I kind of found my people. But I was into I'm talking like 8 years old, 9 years old. I was into like The Cure, The Smiths, New Order, Echo and the Bunnymen, just bands that were not kind of mainstream during those days. I mean, there's definitely people who are into them because they are still popular bands today. But back then, it was a little strange, especially for a little kid to be into that kind of music. And again, it wasn't like somebody influenced me. It just happened to be that the radio station changed, and I just sort of went along with it. Um, but I don't know. I kind of, and I still listen to that kind of stuff, but I also listen to all this. I found that as I got older, I started liking the stuff that I wasn't really as much as I was into back then. Like, so I got more into the rock and roll music that was big during the 80s. I appreciate it. And also, I I find that the music that my parents listened to that I stopped listening to when I was younger because I just didn't think it was cool, I've actually kind of gravitated back to. So like your Eagles, your Fleetwood Mac, I really love, and I hear it on the radio, and then it just brings back memories from when I was listening to the music that my parents played. So that's also a type of music that I've gotten back into as well. And I also I found there's this other genre of music. I don't know if any of you've listened to it or heard it. It's called synthwave, and it's kind of like it's like fake 80s music. It's like all the kind of arrangements and the instruments and the sounds that you'd expect from the 80s, but it's not. It's like contemporary music. I like it because it's kind of like watching an old movie from the 80s. It like makes you have fond memories of how cool the 80s were. And I would describe it. I think if you aren't familiar with the genre, like if you listen to the theme song to Stranger Things, that TV show on Netflix, they actually kind of, I think that's kind of a synthwave uh, song they have at the beginning. But here's the thing: like we look back at the '80s and we see movies that that we might not, if you're not from the '80s, I think '80s seems a lot cooler, or rather radder, and more totally awesome than it actually was, because people didn't dress that way. Like people didn't dress that cool. We wore goofy stuff. We had goofier hairdos. The rooms weren't as fun as you might think they were. I mean, there's a lot of like holdovers from the earlier 80s and 70s that we still had during the 80s. So a lot of houses still were all brown wood paneling and brass lamps and horrible, ugly orange shag carpeting. So that's kind of how the 80s really were. The clothes were not nearly as cool as they'd have you believe. I think the stuff that you see on TV shows that try to go back to the 80s are more like stuff you might have seen on MTV, which is definitely not the stuff that most of the kids were wearing at that time. I mean, unless you're like, must have been like somebody that lived in LA or New York or some fancy place where everybody's hip and up to date. Otherwise, sort of still had goofy parted haircuts, bowl cuts, hairspray, tons of hairspray in your hair. Just really silly fashions that they don't really show you. I mean, just go look at some movies from the 80s, like early 80s, that's kind of close to closer to what I think most people were wearing. But I still love it. Still love the idea of the 80s and what it represented. Okay, let's get into some real pencils here. I tend to use my other pencils as a crutch and sort of a security blanket. The non-repro blue pencils that you see here. Some people are like, why do you color in the blue? Well, it's because it's, again, so I can block out all my shapes and stuff. But sometimes I hang out in the blues a little bit too long for you guys, because you guys want me to get into the actual drawings to see what I'm doing. Other times people are asking, why don't I draw from, the right to the left? And honestly, I couldn't tell you why I do that. It's just how I draw. And I'm not fully in control of the creative process, or it's subconscious. So I'm really not sure how I do a lot of these things. It just sort of happens. And I just go with the flow. So this is my idea for, like, I wish there was like a cartoon about a rock band from outer space, or maybe made up of characters from different parts of the galaxy or universe. I think that would be fun. I think what I would like, if I were to do something like this, is because I'm not a musician, and I wouldn't want to, like, be inaccurate. So if I just, like, made up a story and made up the instruments, that no one would be holding me to, hey, that's not what a guitar looks like, or that's not how you use a, whatever. But if I just did, strange otherworldly characters, then I think maybe people would be a little bit more accepting and wouldn't be as much sticklers on accuracy. But I think it would be a fun story. Maybe I'll pursue that. I think it would be fun. You have all these ideas. I mean, right now I'm just drawing different drawings every day. But as I start building up a library of drawings, I can refer back to them, and there may be direct ideas for stories to create, or there could be things that just inspire me to spin me off into something totally different. That's how drawing works, at least for me. One drawing can inspire another, and it can just keep evolving. I don't know what I'm doing here. Just trying to come up with different types of characters. But I did more than one character today, so we'll see what happens. What kind of music did you guys listen to back in the 80s? Did any of you listen to the same stuff I listened to? Yeah, I got into a lot of stuff, like instead of heavy metal, I was more like into punk. I liked like British ska, not like the '90s No Doubt stuff, but the like the Specials and Madness. Those bands were fun for me. The other thing that I always thought was funny was some bands, like, you look back and they don't really match up. The look doesn't match up with the sound. One band that I think really illustrates that is Kiss. Because if you look at that band Kiss, right, you see how they look. If you never heard their music, you'd think maybe like they'd be some sort of like hardcore death metal type band, but like no, like they're playing like, you listen to music, it's just all happy kind of pop, disco, just really kind of funny stuff that doesn't match up with the way they look. Like they look really scary, but they're really not. So that's why when people say, "Oh yeah, I love Kiss," it's like, do you love Kiss or do you love the way they look? Because I can't really, I don't know, I can't reconcile that in my mind, like how they look that way, but they sound another. But I suppose that's just sort of my prejudices. And when genres are new too, like there's a lot of crossover because it really hasn't gelled yet, like what you're supposed to look like or how you're supposed to dress. So you may find different music that doesn't match with the way that bands eventually start looking like when the genre solidifies. You know, I had done this really cool picture of like this 80s pop star, and you guys will probably see it eventually, but I didn't, I'm still learning how to do all this tech stuff, and I pulled a total bonehead move, and I didn't record the sound. So because of that, there was no sound, and I feel real bummed about that. But you'll definitely see the picture at some point, if not immediately. But there's not really any sound involved with it, so that's what's kind of bummed me out. So now I'm drawing this space band. All right, let's see, how's that look? Get this so you can see what's going on. I love this new remote control I have to zoom in and zoom out, but it's very sensitive. Just finish everything up here. All right, guys. So there you have it. There's the greatest band in the galaxy. sign this up here. All right. All right, folks. Just so you know, I'm here on Facebook, YouTube. We post pictures of my finished pencil sketches on Instagram, and we are feverishly working at putting up abbreviated versions of my drawings and videos on TikTok. So I am available all over the place. And I hope to see you on one of those platforms, and see you tomorrow. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.